Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Deffinition, and you're now locked into the channel where we break down all the latest movies, big game releases, TV shows and comic books. This episode we're going to be going over why a big aspect of the opening of Terminator Dark Fate ruined the entire franchise, didn't make sense and was one of the worst things to happen in the entirety of human history, second place only to the birth of Hitler. There will be heavy spoilers here, so if you haven't seen Terminator Dark Fate, and let's face it, you probably haven't looking at the box office, then I highly recommend that you turn off now. With that out of the way, sit back, shut up, this is the intro, blah blah blah, let's get into the video. Okay, so before we get started on this video, if you've never checked out the channel before, then chances are, off the intro, you probably think that I'm an arsehole and someone who is really negative about movies and makes a living from just tearing them apart and thriving off negativity because hey, the internet loves drama more than the Clintons love hitmen. Well, you'd be wrong. On the channel, I do try and talk about movies in a positive way, even if they're mediocre. On the whole though, I'm very enthusiastic about film. I gave Parasite a 10 out of 10 yesterday, loved The King on Netflix and Doctor Sleep, all of which I gave big scores to. In fact, it's rare that I review something badly, but as a big fan of the Terminator franchise, I just felt like the movie missed the mark in several ways. I've even went back and rewatched all of the films from the 1984 original all the way up to Dark Fate, just to make sure my love for them wasn't for nostalgic reasons, and make sure that the 25,000 reviewers that said, "This is the best Terminator sequel since T2, were indeed wrong. And yet, turns out they are, because Salvation is definitely the best sequel. Don't at me. Anyway, you're probably also thinking, this guy loves the smell of his own farts, which may be true, but I also have a lot of love for the Terminator franchise. I've bought T2 on VHS, DVD, Blu Ray, then the Ultimate Cut on Blu Ray, then the 4K transfer that makes everyone look like Play-Doh, and yeah, I've spent a lot of money and time on this franchise. Everything about Terminator 2 to me is amazing. The effects still hold up, the action is non-stop, and the ending doesn't leave a dry eye in the house. So naturally, when I heard that Terminator Dark Fate was going to be a direct sequel to Terminator 2, I was pretty stoked. This was a chance to right the wrongs of the past and finally get the franchise back to being one of the best, as like Alien, Predators and others, it had fallen by the wayside a bit due to middling to poor sequels. Here was me, wide-eyed going into the cinema, about to receive the biggest slap in the face since the doctor mistook it for my arse when I was born, and within the first 5 minutes of the movie, the love that I'd had for the franchise my entire life, the anticipation that I'd had since 1991, had completely evaporated, replaced with a gut punch that felt pointless, unceremonious, and universe-ruining. Let me set the scene. John Connor, the saviour of mankind and his mother, have finally defeated Skynet, the evil robots from the future that have hunted them for what seems like an eternity. They are finally relaxing, and then, out of nowhere, out of the blue, a 400-pound machine walks up, shoots John, and then dawdles off to go and get a girlfriend for some reason. I was pretty shocked, but not in a good way, and I think my major problem with the film is that in this opening, not only does it make the prior two entries completely pointless, but it also replaces these characters with a rebranded Skynet and people that we don't care about. So let's get this straight. If John Connor is dead, then the first two films are now complete wastes of time. Now I have seen people say that, well, they weren't because they actually managed to stop Skynet. Okay, well that's cool, but then Legion still rose up anyway, so that was completely pointless and humanity are just doomed to a dark fate, and thus, yeah, waste of time. The entire message behind the first two films is that there was no fate, but it seems like whatever way you slice it, this war will always happen one way or another, and thus there's now no need to get invested in the storyline, as even if the saviour of humanity manages to stop the machines, they will just rebrand, change their name to something else, and pop up in 10 years time. Basically, what this movie does in its opening 5 minutes is render T1 and T2 completely pointless, and it also ruins the character arcs going forward for the foreseeable future. If the saviour of mankind can be killed and another one can just take their place, then there is no reason at all to get invested in Danny Ramos, who, from what I saw in the future, didn't do that much anyway, other than create a real life version of a WhatsApp group. If John dies, then there is no true quote-unquote savior, and there is no need to protect Dani, as if she dies then who cares, someone else will be in the future and they can do the work. Now at this point I'm just rambling a bit, but the death also creates a lot of plot holes and things that don't make sense. Up until this point, though there had been a couple of retcons in the Terminator timeline, on the whole it did flow through well and create the events that created it. As we know, Sarah Connor was hunted by a Terminator in the 80s, one then went back to the 90s to kill John. With his mother he managed to stop Skynet, however this was merely delayed, and the apocalypse still happened in Terminator 3. John fought in the war, destroyed Skynet, who in a last ditch attempt to change things, sent back Terminators, and thus the cycle begins again. Every event relies on the ones before and after it to happen. It's nice, it's tight, it's a great timeline. However, wiping this timeline in order to kill John creates a massive plot hole that I haven't actually seen anyone talking about. What it basically boils down to is that John cannot destroy Skynet. That can't happen in order for things to have worked out the way that they did. If the timeline was wiped because they destroyed Skynet, then John could never send back Kyle Reese, so he would never have been born, so there would be no reason for Skynet to send Terminators back to kill him, thus this entire scene could have never happened. Basically, there is a causality that needs to be in place for any of the characters to be in this scene. The subtext of the Terminator franchise was that they could never really kill John because of the grandfather paradox. If Terminators went back in time and managed to kill him, then there would be no reason to send them from the future, and so on. I have seen many people say that this is because it's an alternate timeline, but yeah, sorry, that still doesn't make sense, because even in an alternate timeline, there would still be no reason to go back. Another big problem I have is that the opening of Dark Fate takes place in 1998. In the T2 timeline, the apocalypse takes place in 1997, so why exactly did Skynet send a Terminator back in time to after the nuclear attacks to kill John? Again, I've brought this up and I have seen some people say that this Terminator was sent back to T2 miles and miles away for some reason. However, in an interview with Gizmodo, Tim Miller, the director, says that the Terminator arrived after the events of Terminator 2, which, if you don't know, is set in 1995, so why send him back after this? When defending killing John, later in the interview, Miller says that Terminator was always Sarah's story and not John's. Wrong again. Sarah was the carrier of the future of mankind, hence why there was such importance for her to survive the first movie. If she hadn't been John Connor's mother, then she would have no importance at all. John Connor could have had any mother, it didn't matter who she was or who his father was. The entire story of the first film centered around him being born so he could save mankind. Once he's born, if Sarah dies or not, it does not matter in the grand scheme of things, as he is alive and thus can go on to fight in the future. Sarah isn't the one to do that. The fact that John isn't even in the first film and is still so important shows that it is his story. Terminator 2 is also definitely his story, so yeah, from that statement it's clear Tim Miller doesn't know what he's talking about. Later in the movie, Arnold's new character Carl says that he knows that Legion is sending back Terminators, but how? They were never part of the same company and are from two totally different timelines again, so yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Basically, everything from the Terminator 2 timeline should not exist at this point, including the Terminators, as Skynet was either destroyed or it wasn't. You can't have it both ways. In conclusion, this death basically ruins everything that built up to it and completely devalues everything after it, and shows just how little understanding Tim Miller actually has over the entire franchise. He chucked the baby out with the bathwater to give us a movie that ends up being two robots talking to each other about how Dani should just be handed over. Yeah, that's another bad scene. I don't want to spiral off in the video here, but yeah, really bad. I just have so many problems with this film, but the death of John Connor is the one major thing that stuck with me. For a guy, James Cameron, who said he was angered that Newt and Bishop were killed in Alien 3, he sure didn't mind doing it when he had creative control, and it just shows how much the filmmaker has lost a grasp of what makes his movies good. In addition to this, Tim Miller has really messed up the supposed planned trilogy that was meant to come after this, as it would be difficult for fans to be invested when chances are, down the line, even if Dani stops Legion, a Terminator could just pop up when she's chilling at the beach and kill her. It makes me think that Tim Miller got removed from Deadpool 2 for very good reasons, and looking back at his big success, Deadpool, that opened so many doors for him, it makes me think that Ryan Reynolds was actually the reason that that movie was any good, and that Tim Miller probably wanted to kill Deadpool off in the first 5 minutes. The decision to kill John, in my opinion, not only reeks of short-sightedness, but also appreciation for the character and the fans who've invested so much in him. There was no send-off, no goodbye, just shot and he's dead. I wouldn't have even minded if there'd been a chase of some sort on the beach at the beginning, or you know, just something to make his death feel earned. However, casting him to the side like that is like casting aside the entire franchise. There's no respect shown, no celebration of the work, and it's just a shock for the sake of being shocking. I'm glad that the movie bombed, and for me the Terminator franchise ended the way that the T2 Ultimate Cut did, with John living a happy life, joined by his mother, living in a world where movie studios don't milk properties dry in order to lose money on projects that fail. Who knows, hopefully they'll retcon Dark Fate and we can go back to just seeing John Connor smiling, living a happy life. And that's the video. Obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on my thoughts, so make sure you leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and agree with me, then please give it a thumbs up and make sure you check out a more positive breakdown of the movie Parasite, which will be linked at the end. I go over why the film is one of the best movies of the year, so it's definitely worth checking out if you want to know more. If you want to come chat to me after the video, then make sure you follow me on Twitter at DeffinitionYT, or head over to my Discord server, which will be linked in the description below. We post videos early there and it's free to join, so hopefully I see you over there after this. We're also giving away a free copy of the Marvel Phase 3 Part 1 box set and Blu-ray, which contains Civil War, Doctor Strange, Homecoming, Ragnarok and more, and all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts on Terminator Dark Fate in the comments section below. The winner is going to be chosen on the 15th of November and the set will be shipped out from then to whoever gets the prize, so best of luck to everyone who takes part. This is a channel for people who are mad into movies, so if that's the kind of thing you like, hit subscribe. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this. I've been Deffinition, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.